As a matter of fact, we have read about leadership in the internet and find lots of information and articles on how to be a good leader. To me, leadership is not rocket science. It is about everyday values. The following values are what I have always believed define and make a leader. Firstly, a leader must have integrity and honesty, as without them the leader will be corrupt and untrustworthy. Next, the leader must be willing to work hard and to have pride in their work. Apart from that, a leader must have the hunger for knowledge and be aware of the changes around him. This is especially true when facing with technological advancements and the disruptions they cause. If a leader is oblivious to these changes, they will not be able to impress upon the nation on the need to keep abreast, and in effect, the nation will lag behind and eventually become backward.
As a leader, Dr. Mahathir was a world-renowned figure with multiple personalities. A commoner, a trained professional doctor, and self-made politician. He was called with many names and titles. In his early days of a political career, he was labeled a Malay Ultra and a rebellious Young Turk for his highly combative, confrontational, and adept at open invective. The image was stuck to his personality, created uneasiness among the people when Tun Hussein appointed him as the Deputy Prime Minister in 1976. The period between 1981 to 1986 might be the best years in his political career. He managed to emerge as a pragmatic and transformational leader, unorthodox and nonconformist, modernist and industrialist. He was then celebrated as the architect of modern Malaysia and the father of modernism. The 1987 UMNO leadership crisis, however, revealed his power struggle identity. A Machiavellian and individualist, a fierce and dog fighter. In the 90s, he had developed an image of a futurist and visionary leader. After the removal of Anwar Ibrahim from the cabinet in 1998, he was labeled as a tyrant pharaoh, a dictator and autocratic master of cronyism and a corrupt leader. In 2003, he announced his retirement and left his critics to ponder. Was he a dictator? A dictator would never retire voluntarily. Throughout his 22 years of premiership between 1981 to 2003, Dr. Mahathir had shown his dedication to fighting for the great cause of transforming the socio-economic status of the Malays and the nation. It was the foundation of his political struggle since the publication of the Malay Dilemma in 1970s. By doing so, he had faced the two most challenging situations. First, to form and manage a high-performing team, and second, to groom leaders for the continuation of the struggle for the great cause. The challenge of the team formation. Dr. Mahathir was a strong and tough leader who climbed to the leadership position through a painful process. He had to leave his lucrative career of a medical doctor behind to focus fully on his political career. He had to face the consequences of being expelled from the party and had to work hard to find the way back to the party's leadership. His early career was not as good as he had expected. Although he had reached the top leadership faster than his expectation, he was at the most fragile position when his challengers teamed up against him. During his early days of the administration, Dr. Mahathir takes into consideration the argument that reshuffling will bring a negative impact on his administration. Being a new Prime Minister and UMNO President, he inherited Tun Hussein on cabinet members and the biggest political party in the country. There was almost no reason for him to make a big reshuffle since he had the experience of working with most of them. He knew their strengths and weaknesses, and most of them had shown their ability to deliver the job. What he should do was to develop their trust in him as a new leader and to bring them closer to his side. Therefore, he retained most of the former ministers from Tun Hussein on cabinet and had even promoted some deputy ministers to full ministers. To decide on his deputy prime minister, he let the party leadership succession process operated according to the tradition, and it finally decided on Musa Hitam. Dr. Mahathir did not want to shake the ship and create the rifts among the existing cabinet members. He must have strongly believed in the existing system and the leadership succession process, the party tradition which reflected the people's support as a whole. Throughout his first term as Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir seemed to use the conventional way of team formation by depending on the people's choice. His first cabinet lineup was very much to do with maintaining the stability inherited from Tun Hussein on's administration. The result of the 1982 general election helped him strengthen his team when all ministers retained their ministerial posts until 1986 general election. This second cabinet lineup might be among the best team he ever had, the dream team. The period of working together with Musa Hitam and other cabinet members was dubbed as a honeymoon period. Unfortunately, this period ended in 1986 when Musa Hitam decided to resign. Dr. Mahathir said, "I had hoped that Tun Musa and I would have a good working relationship, better than the one I had with Tun Hussein when I was his deputy. But the honeymoon period during our so-called MM or 2M administration did not last long. He did not give me the support I needed to push through key initiatives such as the National Car Project, and he was unhappy that I had chosen to retain Tengku Razali in the cabinet." Dr. Mahathir's dream team cracked and stumbled further when Musa Hitam decided to team up with Tengku Razali to go against him in the 1987 UMNO party election. The result of the election had brought a serious leadership crisis and split among the party members and ended with the demise of the 1946 UMNO spirit. The crisis, however, did not arise unexpectedly. From Dr. Mahathir's perspective, it was started with his good intention to see the team stronger with more support from the grassroots. In a way, it was a goodwill experiment. Dr. Mahathir might overestimate the level of his team performance. Since almost all members of his team were the members of Tun Hussein cabinet and administration, he must have understood that they were all competent enough to take any challenges under his leadership. On many occasions, he seemed to apply the key result and performance leadership approach. He had in his mind since the beginning of his day as a minister to focus more on the result and performance of each idea, policy and implementation. He said, "When I was minister, deputy prime minister and prime minister, what I looked forward to most was seeing the results of my ideas, policies, and directives taking shape, to see what I had glimpsed in my imagination become reality. Based on this statement, the achievement and the performance of his first term as the Prime Minister, there is a strong evidence pointed towards a certain leadership style related to the team management, as I mentioned in the discussion above. Overall, Dr. Mahathir appeared to be applied a conventional approach of team management with some new experimentation. He moved along with the tradition of keeping the teamwork according to the shared principles, but dominated the decision-making with more personal vision and detailed thinking. This is what he meant through the above statement. There is strong as well as weak Dr. Mahathir's team leadership character. The strong character is mostly related to the visionary and autocratic decision-making of the leadership, whereas the weak character is mostly related to team collaborative management. In this weak character, we might relate with some leadership deficiencies such as 1. Breach the law of the change. The leader is losing the respect of the best man when he does not deal properly with the worth. Maxwell 2001. Undisciplined pursuit of more. The declining proportion of right people in key seats, or problematic succession of power, or allocate more for his personal thinking rather than the sum of his people. Collins 2009. Succumb to the myth of the Lone Ranger. The belief that one person can do something great by breaching the law of significance. Maxwell 2001. Breach the law of the big picture. If you think you are the entire picture, you will never see the big picture. Maxwell 2001. And 5. Breach the law of Mount Everest. Focusing too much on his dream and too little to his team. Maxwell 2001. Succession plan. Perhaps one of the most crucial parts of Dr. Mahathir's leadership is the failure to groom and prepare a successful successor. As the longest serving Prime Minister between 1981 to 2003, he was blessed with 4 deputies. 2 of them resigned voluntarily, 1 was removed involuntarily, and finally he was left with the weakest and incompetent one as the successor. His deputy, Musa Hitam, had resigned from the post in 1986 after some disputes on his policies and leadership styles, as well as his move to retain Razali in the cabinet. His second deputy, Ghaffar Baba, was forced to resign when his new quote-unquote boy, Anwar Ibrahim, moved to challenge the former in 1993 party election. And Anwar Ibrahim became his third deputy in 1993 and was removed from the post after their disputes during the 1998 economic recession. And finally, he was left with Abdullah Badawi, who succeeded him in 2003. Unfortunately, after Abdullah Badawi's poor performance in the 2008 general election, he criticized and labeled him as an incompetent, flip-flop and a weak leader. He forced Abdullah Badawi to resign and was replaced by Najib Razak. After 2015, when 1MDB scandal surfaced, he withdrew support and joined the opposition pact Pakatan Harapan to topple Najib. The Pakatan managed to win 2018 general election, and at the age of 92, Dr. Mahathir was then reappointed as the Prime Minister once again. This time, he appointed Anwar's wife and the PKR President Wan Azizah as the deputy, but agreed to pass over the premiership to Anwar after 2 years of service. Unfortunately, the Sheraton move initiated by Azmin Alis and Muhyiddin Yassin and the team in February 2020 derailed Dr. Mahathir's succession plan for Anwar, and finally it was Muhyiddin who succeeded him. Statistically, Dr. Mahathir's succession plans could be judged as failed, i.e. 4 out of 5 were unsuccessful. However, that is not the case when we study his succession plans based on more variables. The variables are complex. Dr. Mahathir's leadership is one of many variables. His protege's leadership was another variable. They were also playing a significant role, comparatively equal to his role. There were other variables, including the mixing between the flexible and open system of leadership succession in the party and the government, as well as the role of the third party in political games. Since the resignation of Musa Hitam from the Deputy Prime Minister's post in 1986, Dr. Mahathir's succession plan was seen as incompatible with his image of a successful leader. He was accused of practicing a dictatorial style of leadership and would not allow potential leaders to grow under his leadership. In 2016, speaking at a special function commemorating the 113th birthday of the first Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman, Tun Hussein accused Dr. Mahathir of training followers rather than leaders. In a news report, Tun Hussein was reported to say saying that those followers ended up taking over the leadership of the country after he left office. It is ironic that Dr. Mahathir's vision is now certain to fail because of Dr. Mahathir himself. His personal leadership record shows that he did away with all potential leaders and retained and trained followers. It is mostly these trained followers that had taken over the leadership of the country. And these trained followers are dedicated and loyal to whoever sits at the very top. They need to be in order to survive. On the next day, Dr. Mahathir replied to Musa Hitam's comment in what many has termed as a reverse psychology approach. It looks sarcasm and certainly appropriate in response to the cynical statement made by Tun Hussein. The sarcastic response from Dr. Mahathir had also contained a deep meaning. To be a successful successor, each protege should behave accordingly and learn through the leadership by example of the mentor. The response had also demonstrated that there are more variables involved to ensure the success of a political leadership succession plan. They are 1. The internal party system, the role of UMNO Supreme Council. 2. The flexible and democratic leadership succession process through party election. 3. The role of the proteges and the support of the majority. 4. Dr. Mahathir's criteria for choosing the successor was not based on loyalty but the experience and other inherent leadership qualities. And 5. Dr. Mahathir's leadership succession plan was mainly based on the concept of leadership by example. There was a situation where Dr. Mahathir attempted to take into consideration all these variables and did experimentation with his concept of leadership by example. When Tengku Razali was defeated by Tun Musa Hitam in 1981 UMNO Deputy President election, Dr. Mahathir did not want the substantial number of supporters voted Tengku Razali be neglected. And to maintain the support from Tengku Razali and his supporters, Dr. Mahathir retained him as a finance minister. Dr. Mahathir said that, I recognize that both he and Tun Musa were backed by substantial numbers in the party. If I had dropped one, I would have lost his supporters. It was a fight between figures of almost equal stature and popularity. So to keep the party intact, I had to find a place for Tengku Razali. This leadership approach has shown that Dr. Mahathir was concerned more on the followers rather than the leaders in his team.
As we go about our lives, we operate in two circles. The first is our circle of concern. These are things that we care about, or may even affect us, but over which we have little or no control. The second is our circle of influence. These are things which we can control or influence. When people are reactive, they focus on the outer circle. They spend time and energy on things that they really can do nothing about. As a result, their circle of influence shrinks. When people are proactive, they focus on their inner circle of influence, where their efforts will make a positive difference in relationships and results. As a result, their circle of influence grows.
In his leadership by example, Dr. Mahathir seemed to apply a strategic thinking and a forward-looking approach, focusing on the future benefits of the party. Unfortunately, his decision came with a price. By placing so much concern on Tengku Razali and neglecting Musa Hitam, he seemed to drag his leadership focus out of the circle of influence to the circle of concern. These circles, as discussed in the previous chapter, are the description of the leadership focus as adapted from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, 1989. The circles delineated the difference between reactive and proactive leaders. Reactive leaders focus their efforts and time in the circle of concern where they have no control over almost everything inside it. Proactive leaders focus their efforts and time in the circle of influence, the region where they have control and influence. The more they work on the things inside this sphere, the more they will generate the positive energy, and the circle will keep enlarging and magnifying. Imagine the circles as shown in the figure. Dr. Mahathir was looking at the possibilities of losing supporters from Tengku Razali's camp, and this could inevitably weaken his leadership. The circle A, a reactive approach, is the description of what he chose to do when he directed his efforts to bring Tengku Razali's supporters closer to him. He had to go outside from the circle of influence A into the circle of concern B. By stepping into the circle of concern B, Dr. Mahathir had given more support to Tengku Razali, and inevitably it would push the circle of influence A inwards and diminish the circle as shown by the arrows. While diminishing his circle of influence, he was also losing Tun Musa Hitam's trust. He said, "My efforts and Tengku Razali's subsequent return greatly annoyed Tun Musa, who wrote to me to complain that I had retained his rival as minister. Naturally, he did not want a political rival in the cabinet. That is politics. You try to drive out your enemy because you do not know when he will rise up and challenge you again." Dr. Mahathir appeared to understand the concept of a followership as a submissive and passive, as if the obedience of the followers to certain leaders would never be changed. In politics or in any other organization, many followers, except few, tend to follow the winner and neglect the loser. It seemed that Dr. Mahathir had missed the forest while focusing on some trees. If Dr. Mahathir truly believed that there were no permanent followers and no permanent leaders, then he should also believe that Musa Hitam was likely able to drive in many followers of Tengku Razali into his leadership influence. If that is the case, then what Dr. Mahathir should do is to focus his energy on the circle of influence A, where Musa and his influence were positioned, as shown in the figure B, proactive approach. In the circle of influence A, he is supposed to work closely with Musa Hitam and to let Tengku Razali find his way in political career by himself. Tengku Razali's supporters will slowly abandon him when he is out of the political and cabinet position. He will be out of his supporters rather very soon. If Dr. Mahathir was focusing on the circle of influence, he would be concentrating on harnessing his influence over Tun Musa Hitam. He might gain the trust from Musa, just like Tun Razak gained his trust. Better collaboration with Musa Hitam will enlarge the circle of influence A, as shown by the arrows directing outwards. The idea of focus of circles and influence and concern might be one of the best solutions for political leaders to consider when they would like their succession plan to work better.